A common notion that comes up in many debates, in many discussions, in many polemical dialogues is that if you are debating a matter and you receive a good amount of evidence to support the opposition or the other side's argument, then you should abandon your own position and change your mind on that issue. In other words, you should be open minded and unbiased and not partisan and should seek the truth. That is absolutely true. We should be open minded, we should look for the evidence. Yet it may not be that simple. In certain debates, whether they be theological, philosophical, metaphysical, sociological, or political, both sides, which are based in thousands, hundreds, or many years of tradition, arguments, rational philosophical developments, and history, these arguments that have been developed by thousands, hundreds of scholars, with an ad infinitum amount of responses, of facts, of concepts, these notions having informed the lives of millions of people across the globe, having real world effects. Is it so simple then to say that we could just change your mind if one good piece of evidence comes up or one good argument comes up? Even after tens of years of studying both sides of an argument, can we really and truly come to a conclusion of which side is better? Many scholars have devoted their lives to investigating an issue, trying to understand the issue better, yet often don't come to a conclusive final say, so to speak, about an issue. In other words, they may not necessarily be the final say on a certain matter, on a certain debate. Hence, an important counter question comes. If both sides have developed these arguments over God knows how long, and these notions have informed the lives of millions of people, wouldn't it be actually a sign of intellectual flimsiness and weakness just to change your mind after one argument? Or, in other words, if you hear one good argument, let's say, but there's a sea, there's an ocean of hundreds of different good possible counter arguments. In the future, a better possible counter argument may arise that destroys this current argument. Is it simply okay then to just base your faith in this one good argument, seemingly? This raises the point there that there are certain hills to be fought on and even died upon for some people. Now, the hills that we choose to fight and die on are different for each of us. Certain concepts that I may hold dear are different from what other peoples may hold dear. Everybody has their own notions which they hold very deeply to themselves. But these notions inform their decisions, inform their worldview, and often cases such a foundational basis for their worldview, it's very difficult to change that. It's very difficult to, sort of change your mind on those issues and come to a different conclusion altogether. So although we should be open-minded theoretically, the reality is that as humans who are based in our social context, in our group, based in the environment that we live in the events that occur around us, in the experiences that inform our worldview, in the journeys we take to come to certain conclusions, we all have certain intellectual hills that we are willing to spiritually die on, so to speak. I have discussed this before in my previous videos about polemics. Oftentimes, a lot of debates are like semantic trench warfare, where both sides make very little progress on the actual fundamental principle being discussed at hand. Yet these debates span eons. Even though these differences on a fundamental philosophical principle may be arbitrary, to a certain extent they are very real because they've informed the lives of millions of people and have had very real world effects. But ultimately, isn't that what it means to be human? To be human is to have certain very closely held beliefs that you would believe in no matter what. Only intellectuals who can afford to think in a vacuum, in a contextless, very theoretical, abstract sort of worldview, only they who can operate within this kind of intellectual ivory tower, so to speak, can they come to this kind of very unpartisan, unbiased conclusion. When we're operating in real world conditions, oftentimes we don't have a choice but to take a partisan view or a biased view. In other words, me and you can sit here and have a theoretical discussion about some abstract fourth ideal or whatnot. But in the real world, we may have to take a very strong stance on a certain issue. We may not have a choice on it at all. Of course, this is not to say that we shouldn't be open to different pieces of evidence and come to different conclusions. That's what seeking the truth is all about, and certain people, whether they be the philosophers or academics, attempt to seek the truth, regardless of whether it may please their previous assumptions about the world or not. But inevitably, as human beings, we do have certain intellectual hills to die upon. After all, to die upon certain intellectual hills, the fact that we do and we have throughout history, that is part of what it is to be human, and it's a very real part of the human experience.